John Callahan adjusted his tie and took a deep breath. The gleaming halls of Epsilon 7 space station felt cold and unwelcoming. As Earth's lead diplomat, he carried the hopes of humanity on his shoulders. Today was the first official meeting between humans and the Vikener Dominion, a powerful alien empire that had conquered 3 star systems in the past Earth decade. The small diplomatic team behind John looked nervous. They had good reason to be. Reports from other alien species painted the Vikener as ruthless conquerors who saw negotiation as a sign of weakness. "Remember the protocol?" John said quietly to his team. "Stay calm, speak only when addressed, and follow my lead." Susan Wells, his deputy, nodded. Her face was pale but determined. "Do you really think they'll listen to us, John?" He gave her a small smile. "Everyone wants something. Our job is to figure out what they want and find a way to give it to them without giving up what matters to us." The doors at the end of the hallway slid open with a soft hiss. 2 station security officers stepped through, followed by the Vikener delegation. John managed to keep his expression neutral, but it took effort. The aliens were impressive and frightening. Each Vikener stood nearly 7 feet tall, with scaled skin in shades of deep blue and green. Bony ridges protected their heads and necks, and their 4 eyes, 2 large primary ones and 2 smaller ones above, scanned the humans with obvious disdain. Most alarming were their upper limbs, which ended in 3-fingered hands with retractable claws that looked sharp, enough to tear through metal. The lead Vikener wore an elaborate harness covered in what seemed to be military badges. His scales had a slightly reddish tint that made him stand out from the others. "Supreme Commander Zertak of the glorious Vikener Dominion," announced the station's AI translator. "First Claw of the Emperor, conqueror of the Beltuvi worlds, victor of the Battle of 3 Suns." John stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Supreme Commander, I am John Callahan, Chief Diplomatic Envoy of the United Earth Government. We are honored by your presence and look forward to establishing peaceful relations between our peoples." The translator converted his words into the harsh clicking and hissing sounds of the Vikener language. Zertak's upper eyes narrowed as he listened. "After a moment," he responded, "the Vikener Dominion acknowledges the Earth delegation." The translator spoke in flat tones. "We will proceed to the conference chamber." John noticed Zertak had offered no titles or honors in return, not even a basic diplomatic courtesy. Not a good sign. The 2 groups moved down the hallway toward the large circular room that had been prepared for the talks. The station's artificial gravity felt slightly off, making John's steps awkward compared to the smooth movements of the Vikener. Inside the conference chamber, the 2 delegations took their places across from each other at a large oval table. The station's neutral ambassadors sat at each end to mediate. John placed his tablet on the table and looked directly at Zertak. "Supreme Commander, we have prepared a detailed proposal for trade, cultural exchange, and territorial boundaries. Earth respects the sovereignty of the Vikener Dominion and seeks peaceful coexistence." The translator barely finished speaking before Zertak made a sharp, dismissive gesture with one clawed hand. "The Vikener do not coexist," came the translated reply. "We conquer or we are conquered. This is the natural order of all life." John kept his expression neutral despite the bluntness of the statement. "Perhaps our peoples can find a new way forward together. Humanity has much to offer in science, art, and—" "We have observed your species," Zertak interrupted. "Soft-skinned primates without natural weapons or defenses. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your colonies barely extend beyond your home system while our empire spans the stars." Susan tensed beside John, but he gave her a subtle signal to remain calm. "Physical appearances can be deceiving, Supreme Commander," John replied evenly. "Humans have survived and thrived on a planet with many dangerous predators. Our strength lies in our adaptability and cooperation." Zertak's secondary eyes blinked rapidly, which the human team had been briefed might indicate amusement or contempt. "Your adaptability will be tested when your people serve the Dominion," the commander said. "The Emperor has decreed that all species must know their place in The great chain, yours is beneath us. The atmosphere in the room grew tense. One of the neutral ambassadors, a gelatinous being from the Hydran Collective, rippled nervously. Perhaps we should review the proposed non-aggression treaty, the ambassador suggested. There will be no treaty, Zertak declared. The Vikener fleet already moves toward the edge of Earth's solar system. We offer you this chance to surrender with honor. Resistance will only bring suffering to your people. The human delegation exchanged alarmed glances. This wasn't just going poorly, it was a disaster. Supreme Commander, John said, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. War between our peoples would benefit neither side. Surely there must be resources or knowledge we can exchange that would make peaceful relations more valuable than conflict. Zertek stood abruptly, his imposing frame casting a shadow across the table. This meeting is concluded. You have 3 of your Earth days to prepare your surrender terms. After that, the Dominion will take what it wants. With that, the Vikener delegation turned and marched from the room, leaving a stunned silence behind. That, Susan said quietly, could have gone better. Back in their temporary quarters on the station, the Earth team gathered for an emergency meeting. Commander Amy Russell of the UES Intrepid, the military escort for the diplomatic mission, joined them via secure hologram. How bad is it? She asked, her holographic form flickering slightly. John rubbed his tired eyes. They've essentially declared war. They have a fleet heading toward our solar system and expect us to surrender within 3 days. Commander Russell's expression hardened. The Intrepid can be back at Earth in 36 hours. We'll need to prepare our defenses. Intelligence. Reports say their fleet outguns our combined forces by at least 3 to 1, Susan added glumly. And their technology is more advanced? John paced the small room, thinking. Something doesn't add up. If they're so powerful, why bother with this meeting at all? Why not just attack? Maybe they wanted to see if we'd surrender without a fight, suggested Pete Garcia, the team's xenanthropologist. From what we know of their culture, they respect strength but consider it wasteful to destroy those who can be useful. John stopped pacing. That's it, they're testing us. They want to see if we're worthy of their respect? By threatening to annihilate us? Commander Russell asked skeptically. It's consistent with their cultural values, Pete confirmed. To the Vikener, fear equals weakness and weakness deserves conquest. John made a decision. I need to meet with Zerdak again, alone this time. The room erupted in protests. That's too dangerous. They'll take you hostage. We need you here to coordinate our response. John held up his hands for silence. We have nothing to lose. If I can convince him that humans are worthy of respect, maybe I can buy us more time. He turned to Commander Russell. Meanwhile, send word to Earth, prepare for the worst, but hope for something better. The commander nodded grimly. I'll get the message to the Security Council immediately. As the others filed out to carry out their tasks, Susan stayed behind. John, what are you really planning? He smiled slightly. Something crazy. I'm going to ask Zertak for something no one has ever requested from the Vikener. What's that? I'm going to ask him to listen. To everyone's surprise, Zertak agreed to meet John alone the following day. As John walked toward the meeting point, a small observation deck overlooking the stars, he knew this might be humanity's last chance for peace. The fate of Earth depended on the words of just one human diplomat. John arrived at the observation deck 15 minutes early. The vast window showed the blackness of space dotted with distant stars. The diplomatic team had tried to talk him out of this meeting. Even the station security expressed concern about the human diplomat meeting alone with the Vikener commander. John understood their worries, but knew this might be their only chance. He heard the Vikener before he saw them. Their heavy steps and the slight clicking of their claws against the floor announced their approach. John turned to see Zertak enter the room, followed by 2 guards who took positions at the door. You requested this meeting, human, Zertak said through his translator. Speak your purpose. John gestured to the stars visible through the window. I wanted to talk somewhere we could both see the same view. The same universe that both our species call home? The Vickener commander made a sound that the translator didn't convert. It might have been a laugh or a scoff. Poetic words do not change reality, Zertak said. The universe belongs to the strong. It has always been this way. Instead of arguing, John tried a different approach. I would like to learn about your people, Supreme Commander. Not just your military strength, but your history, your culture. What made the Vickener who they are today? Zertak's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, suggesting surprise. You face extinction, yet you wish to learn about us? Your time would be better spent preparing your surrender terms. Understanding comes before resolution, John said. My job as a diplomat is to find common ground. I cannot do that without knowing who you are. The Vickener commander studied John for a long moment. Then he moved closer to the window, his scaled skin reflecting the starlight. The homeworld of the Vickener is a harsh place. 3 times Earth gravity. Higher oxygen levels that would poison your lungs. Temperatures that would cook your soft skin. But the true challenge was not the environment. It was the other predators. John listened carefully as Zertak described a world where Vickener were not always the dominant species. They evolved alongside 6 other intelligent predator species, each competing for resources. Early Vickener learned that weakness meant death. Strength and unity within their own kind were the only paths to survival. We did not conquer our world by negotiation or compromise, Zertak said. We conquered it by becoming stronger than our enemies. The other species now serve us or exist only in our historical records. And you applied this same principle when you developed space travel, John said, beginning to understand. Of course. The stars are no different than the hunting grounds of our ancestors. Those who cannot defend themselves become prey, John nodded. On Earth, humans were not the strongest species for most of our history. We had no claws, no armor, no venom. Large predators could easily kill an individual human. Yet you survived? Zertak said, a hint of curiosity in his voice. We survived through cooperation and innovation. We learned to work together, to create tools, to adapt our environment rather than simply adapting to it. A single human is vulnerable, but humans working together built civilizations. The Vickener commander turned his massive head toward John. And yet your civilizations fought each other. We have studied your history, your world wars, your genocides. You are not so different from us. John didn't deny it. We have often been our own worst enemies. But we learned, over time, that cooperation brings greater benefits than conflict. Trading goods is more profitable than stealing them. Sharing knowledge advances everyone faster than hoarding it. These are the words of the weak, Zertak said. But there was less conviction in his translated voice. Are they? John challenged gently. Is it weak to find solutions that don't require bloodshed? Is it weak to turn potential enemies into allies? The Vickener conquered through strength, yes. But maintaining an empire through fear alone requires constant vigilance against rebellion. Zertak was silent for several moments, watching the stars. Finally, he spoke again. You are not what I expected, John Callahan. Most species beg for mercy when facing the Dominion. You seek understanding instead. Why are you not afraid? The question seemed genuine. John considered his answer carefully. I am afraid. Any sane person would be afraid when facing a superior military force, but fear doesn't help me do my job. And my job is to find a path forward that benefits both our peoples. The Vickener commander made that untranslatable sound again. A path that does not exist. The Emperor has decreed that Earth will join the Dominion. This is not negotiable. John took a risk. What if there was another option? Not surrender, not war, but something unexpected? Speak plainly, human. A cultural exchange, John said. Before you decide our fate, let a small team of humans visit your homeworld. Learn about your society firsthand. In return, Earth would host Vickener observers. Both sides would gain knowledge and understanding before any final decisions are made. Zertak's secondary eyes narrowed. This is merely a delay tactic, perhaps, John admitted. But it also shows that humans are not afraid to face the heart of the Vikener Dominion. No other species has ever volunteered to visit your homeworld. Have they? This seemed to strike a chord with the Vikener commander. His posture shifted slightly. No, they have not. Zyrtec turned fully to face John. You would willingly place yourself in the center of our power, knowing you might never return? Yes, to prevent a war that would cost millions of lives on both sides. I believe it's worth the risk. The silence stretched between them. John waited, knowing that pushing harder might break this fragile moment. You are either very brave or very foolish, John Callahan, Zyrtec finally said. Perhaps both. I will present your proposal to the Emperor. The fleet will maintain its position at the edge of your system until a decision is made. Relief flooded through John, though he kept his expression neutral. Thank you, Supreme Commander. That's all I ask. As Zyrtec turned to leave, he paused. The gravity on our homeworld would crush your bones, human. The air would burn your lungs. You would not survive a single day without special equipment. John smiled slightly. Then we'll bring special equipment. Humans are good at adapting. The Vikener made that sound again, and this time John was almost certain it was a laugh after. Zyrtec left. John remained at the window for a long time, watching the stars. He had bought Earth some time, but whether it would lead to peace or merely delay the inevitable remained to be seen when he returned to the human quarters. The team was waiting anxiously. Well? Susan asked as soon as the door closed behind. The Vikener fleet is holding position, John said. Zyrtec is taking our proposal to his emperor. What proposal? Commander Russell's hologram demanded. John took a deep breath. I volunteered for us to send a small delegation to the Vikener homeworld. In exchange, they would send observers to Earth. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. You did what? Their homeworld. Are you insane? They'll take hostages. John raised his hands for quiet. It was the only play we had. The Vikener respect courage and strength. By offering to go to their center of power, we show both. Or we show them our weakness up close, Commander Russell said grimly. This could just be a way for them to gather intelligence before they invade. That's possible, John conceded. But I learned something important today. The Vikener believe strength is the only law of the universe because that's been their experience. If we can show them another way, we might change their minds. Pete, the xenanthropologist, looked thoughtful. It's not unprecedented. On Earth, first contact between different cultures often led to violence, but sometimes it led to exchange and mutual benefit. And sometimes it led to disease and genocide, Susan pointed out. John nodded. All true. This is a gamble. But it's a gamble with a potential payoff of peace. 2 days later, word came from the Vikener fleet. The Emperor had approved the exchange. A small human delegation would be permitted to visit Drakath, the Vikener homeworld. In return, 3 Vikener observers would travel to Earth. As John prepared his team for the journey into the heart of the Dominion, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was either the beginning of a new era of interspecies cooperation or the prelude to humanity's greatest challenge. Either way, there was no turning back now. The Vikener ship was nothing like human vessels. Its corridors were tall and wide with harsh lighting that hurt John's eyes. The temperature was uncomfortably hot, and the air felt thick with extra oxygen. Without their special breathing masks, the humans would have been unconscious within minutes. John led a small team of 3 others, Dr. Lisa Gardner, a cultural anthropologist with experience in first contact situations, Paul Martinez, a xenolinguist who was already learning the complex Vikener language, and Captain Frank Winters, a military attaché who wore a powered exosuit that helped him move in the high gravity. They were the first non-conquered aliens ever permitted on the Vikener homeworld. Remember, John told his team as they prepared to disembark, we're here to learn and understand, not judge. Their ways will seem harsh to us, but they evolved in a different environment with different challenges. The 4 humans stepped off the ship onto the surface of Drakath. Even with their protective suits and breathing equipment, the planet felt oppressive. The gravity pulled at their bodies. The red sun burned in a hazy orange sky. In the distance, massive structures of black metal and stone rose from the rocky landscape. A group of Vikener officials waited for them. At the front stood a female Vikener with greenish scales and elaborate markings on her head ridges. "I am High Speaker Krelva," she said through the translation device. "I will be your guide during your stay on sacred Drakath. Follow me to your quarters." The humans struggled to keep pace with the Vikener as they walked toward the nearest building. Even with his exosuit, Captain Winters moved awkwardly. John could see the Vikener guards watching them, probably noting their physical limitations. Their quarters were Spartan but specially modified for human needs. The temperature was cooler, the oxygen levels reduced, and the furniture scaled for their smaller bodies. Small concessions, but meaningful ones. "The Dominant Council will receive you tomorrow," Krelva informed them. "Rest now. You will need your strength." After she left, Lisa collapsed into a chair. "I don't know if I can do this for 3 months. "The gravity alone is exhausting. We'll adapt," John assured her. Humans always do. The next day, they were escorted to the Dominant Council, the ruling body beneath the Emperor. The council chamber was intimidating, with high ceilings and walls decorated with weapons and battle scenes. 7 senior Vikener sat on elevated seats, looking down at the humans with their 4 eyes. "The council acknowledges the human delegation," said the center Vikener, who wore the most elaborate armor. "You are the first non-subject species to stand before us. Explain your purpose here." John stepped forward, conscious of how small he must appear to them. "Honorable Council, we come seeking understanding between our peoples. Humans believe that knowledge must precede judgment. We wish to learn about your society, history, and values before our worlds decide on war or peace." There was a ripple of that untranslatable sound among the council members. One of them leaned forward. "You stand in the heart of our power, surrounded by warriors who could tear you apart with their bare hands, yet you speak of peace? Humans are either very brave or very foolish." "Perhaps a bit of both," John admitted with a slight smile. "But we believe the risk is worth taking if it prevents unnecessary bloodshed." For the next several weeks, the human delegation attended various functions and observations. They witnessed military training exercises where young Vikener fought in brutal combat. They attended industrial centers where subject species worked alongside Vikener overseers. They observed educational facilities where Vikener children learned about their species' superiority through historical examples. Throughout it all, John and his team were careful to observe without criticism. They asked questions that showed interest rather than judgment. Slowly, the Vikener began to treat them with something approaching respect. During a formal dinner with military officials, one Vikener commander asked Paul about human warfare. "Our records show your species fought many wars among yourselves," he said, "yet you claim to value peace? This seems contradictory." Paul considered his answer carefully. "Humans fought because we were divided into separate nations with different interests. As we developed global communication and trade, we realized that cooperation often brought greater benefits than conflict. We still maintain military forces for defense, but most humans prefer peaceful solutions when possible. Preference is irrelevant," the commander replied. "The strong survive, the weak perish. This is the law of nature." "On Earth," Lisa joined in, "we found that cooperation could make the weak strong. No single human could survive against a predator, but humans working together conquered our world." Meanwhile on Earth, the 3 Vikener observers were having their own cultural experiences. Sub-Commander Krelvax, a younger cousin of High Speaker Krelva, found human civilization confusing and fascinating. The Vikener were particularly puzzled by human art, music, and entertainment. They reported back to their superiors about the strange activities humans engaged in that seemed to have no survival purpose. 1 month into the exchange, the human delegation was invited to observe a ceremonial combat demonstration in a massive arena. Thousands of Vikener filled the stands as warriors displayed their fighting skills. John noticed that many kept glancing at the humans, perhaps wondering how such physically weak creatures could have developed spacefaring technology. Halfway through the demonstration, A loud crack echoed through the arena. One of the support beams in the viewing area where several high-ranking Vikener sat had fractured. The section began to collapse. Without hesitation, Captain Winters activated his exosuit to full power and rushed forward. He positioned himself under the collapsing section and braced his enhanced body against the weight, holding it up while the Vikener nobles evacuated. The arena fell silent as everyone watched the human straining under the weight. His exosuit winced with the effort, but he held firm until the last Vikener was clear. Then he carefully lowered the section and stepped away. For a moment, no one moved. Then one of the saved nobles approached Captain Winters. "You risked your life for mine," the Vikener said, sounding confused. "We are not allies, we are potential enemies. Why would you do this?" Winters, breathing heavily even through his mask, straightened as much as the gravity allowed. "Where I come from, we don't let people die if we can help them, regardless of who they are." The noble turned to John. "Is this common among humans?" John nodded. "Yes, we call it compassion. It's considered one of our better qualities." That evening, the human delegation was summoned to meet with Supreme Commander Zertak, who had returned to the homeworld. When they arrived at his command center, they found him reviewing reports from the Vikener observers on Earth. "Your world is strange," Zertak said without preamble. "My observers report that humans spend time and resources on activities with no survival benefit. You create objects of beauty rather than utility. You care for your weak rather than culling them. By all natural laws, your species should have perished long ago. Yet here we are," John said simply, Zertak's 4 eyes fixed on him. "Yes, here you are. And today, your warriors saved the lives of 3 council members' offspring using technology that enhances your natural weakness. This is ... unexpected." John saw an opportunity. "Supreme Commander, humans have learned that different kinds of strength exist. Physical power is one kind, but so is innovation, cooperation, and yes, compassion. Compassion is not strength." Zertak insisted, but his tone suggested uncertainty. "Isn't it?" John asked. "The ability to help others, even at risk to yourself, has allowed humans to build complex societies where everyone contributes according to their abilities. We don't. All need to be warriors when we can be scientists, artists, builders, and healers working together." Zertak was silent for a long moment. "You have given me much to consider, John Callahan. The exchange will continue as planned." As they left the command center, Lisa whispered to John, "I think you're actually getting through to them." John nodded. Cautiously. "Maybe, but remember, we've still got 2 months to go. Anything could happen." He didn't know how prophetic those words would prove to be. 3 months into the cultural exchange, things were going better than John had dared hope. The human delegation had been granted access to more areas of Vikener society, including some of their research facilities and cultural centers. Meanwhile, the Vikener observers on Earth sent increasingly curious reports about human music, art, and social structures. John was reviewing notes in the human quarters when Paul rushed in, his face pale despite the heat. "We've lost contact with Earth," the xenolinguist said, his voice tight with worry. "All communications channels are down." Lisa and Captain Winters looked up from their work. John set down his tablet. "Could it be a technical problem?" he asked, though he already suspected it wasn't. Paul shook his head. "I checked with the Vikener communications officers. They've lost contact with their observers, too. Something's happened." Before they could discuss further, the door slid open. 4 Vikener guards entered, their postures rigid and threatening. "You will come with us," the lead guard said. Now, the humans exchanged worried glances but complied. They were led through corridors they hadn't been shown before, deeper into the massive governmental complex. Eventually, they reached a large security center filled with Vikener military personnel. Screens displayed star maps and fleet positions. In the center stood Zertek, his scales darkened with what John had learned was anger. "What have your people done?" the Supreme Commander demanded as soon as he saw them. "I don't understand," John replied cautiously. "We've lost contact with Earth, too." "We don't know what's happening," Zertek gestured to a screen. "Our embassy on your planet has been attacked." Several observers are dead. Simultaneously, communications were severed. This was planned. John felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Supreme Commander, I assure you, if there was an attack, it wasn't sanctioned by our government. We need to re-establish communications and find out what happened. It is too late for words, Zertek said. The fleet has been ordered to advance. On your solar system, the Emperor has declared war. The humans stood in shocked silence. Months of careful diplomacy destroyed in an instant. Please, John said urgently, don't do this. Whatever happened, we can resolve it peacefully. War will only bring suffering to both our peoples. The decision is made, Zertek replied coldly. You will be detained until... He was interrupted by a sudden commotion. The doors burst open and several Vikener warriors rushed in, weapons drawn. They weren't aiming at the humans, however. They were aiming at Zertek. What is the meaning of this? The Supreme Commander demanded. The lead warrior stepped forward. By order of General Crafter, you are relieved of command. The attack on the human delegation will proceed as planned. John realized with growing horror that there had been coordinated attacks on both Earth and Drakath. Someone wanted this war to happen. Zertek didn't surrender his position easily. I take orders only from the Emperor. Who dares challenge the chain of command? The true warriors of the Dominion, replied the rebel leader. Those who will not be weakened by human ideas of cooperation and compassion. The Emperor has grown soft. It is time for new leadership. Fighting broke out in the command center. Vikener loyal to Zertek fought against the rebels. The humans were caught in the middle, unarmed and vulnerable. This way, Captain Winters whispered, pulling the others toward a side door. Using his exosuit's enhanced strength, he forced it open, and they slipped away from the fighting dot in the corridor outside. They encountered more chaos. The coup attempt had spread throughout the complex. We need to get to a communications array. John said, if we can contact Earth, maybe we can stop this war before it starts? And how do we do that when half the Vikener want us dead? Lisa asked. John thought quickly. The cultural center has a long-range communications system. We saw it during our tour last week. It's used to communicate with Vikener colonies. It's our best shot, Paul agreed. They moved through the corridors as carefully as they could, avoiding the worst of the fighting. Captain Winters took the lead, his exosuit providing some protection. Twice they had to hide from groups of rebel warriors searching for them. When they finally reached the cultural center, they found it largely deserted. Most of the staff had either joined the fighting or gone into hiding. Paul went straight to the communication system and began working to establish a connection with Earth. I don't understand why anyone would want this war, Lisa said as they waited. The exchange was going well. We were learning from each other. Some people fear change, John replied, and some Vikener clearly see human ideas as a threat to their way of life. Ideas can be more dangerous than weapons sometimes. Paul looked up from the console. It's no use. The system's been locked down. I can't break through. John's mind raced. They needed a way to stop the war, but with communications down and rebels controlling much of the complex, their options were limited. Then he remembered something from their cultural briefings. There's an ancient Vikener custom, he said slowly. Truth-speaking before war. It allows anyone to address the Emperor directly before hostilities begin. Even non-Vikener? Lisa asked skeptically. The text didn't specify, John admitted. But it's worth trying. We need to get to the Imperial Chamber. That's suicide, Captain Winters protested. The place will be crawling with rebels. Do you have a better idea? John asked. When no one answered, he nodded grimly. Then we try. For the Imperial Chamber. Getting there proved even more difficult than reaching the communication center. Twice they nearly ran into rebel patrols. Once they had to hide in a maintenance shaft while warriors searched for them. By the time they reached the outer doors of the Imperial Wing, they were exhausted. Two massive guards stood at the entrance, their loyalty unclear. I need to speak with the Emperor, John declared, stepping forward. I invoke the right of truth-speaking before war. The guards exchanged looks of surprise. One of them spoke into a communication device on his armor. After a tense moment, he nodded. "The Emperor will hear the human," he announced. "But only one may enter." John turned to his team. "Wait here. If I'm not back in an hour, we'll come after you," Captain Winters promised. The Imperial Chamber was the most impressive room John had seen on Drakath. It soared upward, at least 100 feet, with massive pillars carved from some black stone. At the far end sat the Emperor on an elevated throne. Surrounding him were members of the Dominant Council, including Zertak, who had apparently escaped the rebels. "Approach, human," the Emperor commanded. His voice was deeper than any Vikener John had met, and his scales had a golden sheen. "You. Invoke an ancient rite. Speak your truth." John walked forward, feeling the weight of the moment. The fate of Earth might depend on what he said next. "Great Emperor, both our worlds stand on the edge of war because of the actions of extremists. On Earth, terrorists attacked your embassy. Here on Drakath, rebels tried to overthrow your commander. These are not the actions of our governments, but of those who fear peace between our peoples." The Emperor's 4 eyes fixed on John. "Why should the Dominion care about peace with humans?" "You are weak. Your world would fall easily to our fleet." "Because war benefits neither of us," John replied. "Humans may not have your physical strength, but we are resourceful and determined. We would fight to the last person. You might win, but at great cost." Zertak stepped forward. "The human speaks truth, Emperor. Their weapons, while inferior to ours, could still destroy many of our ships. Victory would not be as easy as some claim." A murmur ran through the council. John noticed one member glaring at Zertak with obvious hatred. "That must be General Kravter, the leader of the rebellion." "Let me prove humans are worthy of respect," John said, seizing the moment. "According to your traditions, I challenge General Kravter to ritual combat." The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Even Zertak looked stunned. The Emperor raised a hand for silence. "You, a human, challenge a Vikener warrior?" The Emperor's voice held what might have been amusement. "You would not survive the first blow. I invoke another tradition," John continued. "The right to choose a champion." He pointed to a small Vikener standing near the throne. "I choose the Emperor's youngest offspring as my champion." This caused even greater uproar. The young Vikener, still a child by their standards, looked confused. General Kravter roared in outrage. "This is a mockery of our sacred traditions." He bellowed. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "No, this is a clever use of our traditions. The human has created a situation where combat cannot proceed without either dishonoring my bloodline or violating our ancient laws." He looked at John with new interest. "You have studied our ways well, John Callahan." "I came here to understand your people," John replied. "And to find a path to peace? A noble goal," the Emperor said. "But the question of war remains. My fleet approaches Earth even now." Before John could respond, a Vikener messenger rushed into the chamber. "Emperor, communications with Earth have been restored. The human government sends word that the attack on our embassy was carried out by a terrorist group. They have arrested the perpetrators and offer reparations." John felt a surge of hope. "Emperor, this confirms what I've said. Neither of our governments wants this war. Please recall your fleet. Let us continue the exchange that was showing such promise." In the days following the crisis, tension remained high on Drakath. The attempted coup had been put down, but supporters of General Kravter still held positions throughout the military. The Vikener fleet remained at the edge of Earth's solar system, weapons ready. One wrong move from either side could still trigger war. John and his team were allowed to return to their quarters, but were kept under guard. They had no way of knowing if their actions had truly made a difference or merely delayed the inevitable. On the 5th day, Zertak arrived at their quarters. His scales looked dull from exhaustion. "The Emperor wishes to speak with you," he told John, alone. John's teammates exchanged worried glances. The last time John had gone alone to meet a Vikener leader, it had worked out, but there was no guarantee. This time would be the same. "I'll be fine," John assured them. "This might be our best chance." He followed Zertak through the complex to a smaller chamber he hadn't seen before. Unlike the Grand Imperial Chamber, this room was intimate, with a low ceiling and simple furnishings. The Emperor sat on a plain chair rather than a throne. There were no guards or council members present. "John Callahan," the Emperor said, motioning for him to sit. "I have been reviewing the reports from our observers on Earth, as well as the findings about the embassy attack. It seems you spoke truth. The attack was indeed carried out by a small group opposed to relations with non-humans." "And the same is true here," John replied. General Crafter and his supporters feared change. They saw human ideas as a threat to Vikener traditions. The Emperor made that untranslatable sound that John now recognized as acknowledgement. Yes, change is always feared by some. But a species that cannot adapt is doomed to extinction. This is the first law of nature. John nodded, surprised by the Emperor's words. They seemed at odds with the Vikener philosophy of strength above all. "There is something I must ask you," the Emperor continued. "Something that has puzzled our observers. On Earth, why do humans create art and music? What survival purpose does it serve?" The question caught John off guard. Of all the things the Emperor might want to discuss, he hadn't expected this. "Art and music help us connect with each other," John explained. "They express emotions and ideas that might be difficult to communicate directly. They bring us joy and comfort during difficult times." "Joy and comfort," the Emperor repeated, as if testing unfamiliar concepts. "These have no place in Vikener society. We value strength, honor, victory. Yet our observers report that these human creations stirred feelings they could not explain. Even Sub-Commander Krelvax, one of our most disciplined warriors, requested to extend his stay on Earth to learn more about human music." John smiled slightly. Sometimes the greatest strength is the ability to appreciate beauty and find meaning beyond survival. The Emperor was silent for a moment, considering. Then he stood and moved to a wall panel. He pressed a control, and a hidden door opened. "There is something you should see, John Callahan. Something no outsider has ever been shown." John followed. The Emperor threw the door into a small, dark chamber. As his eyes adjusted, he saw that the walls were covered with intricate carvings. They depicted Vikener in various poses, some fighting, but others in peaceful scenes, tending young, building structures, even what appeared to be dancing. "These date from before the Unification Wars," the Emperor explained, "before strength became our only virtue. They were created by my ancestors, who believed Vikener were capable of more than conquest." John studied the carvings with amazement. "They're beautiful." "Yes," the Emperor agreed, "and forbidden. If General Crafter had discovered this chamber, it would have been destroyed as heresy against the Dominion's principles." "Why are you showing me this?" John asked. The Emperor turned to face him directly. "Because you have shown me that there are different kinds of strength. The kind that builds rather than destroys. The kind that unites rather than conquers. Perhaps it is time for the Vikener to remember this." They returned to the outer chamber, where the Emperor activated a display screen. It showed a star map of Vikener territory, including their homeworld. "There is another truth you should know," the Emperor said, his voice low. "One that only the dominant council is aware of. Our sun is dying." John looked at the display more closely and saw data readings from the Vikener star. The numbers meant little to him, but the trend was clear: increasing instability, radiation spikes, unusual solar flare activity. "Within a century, Drakath will be uninhabitable," the Emperor continued. "Our scientists have confirmed it. Our conquests were not merely to expand our glory. They were to find suitable worlds for our people." Suddenly, the Vikener aggression made more sense to John. They weren't just conquerors. They were survivors looking for a new home. "Earth has terraforming technology," John said, thinking quickly. "We've used it to make Mars more habitable. It might be possible to stabilize some of the planets in your system. Create new homes for your people without the need for conquest." The Emperor's four eyes widened slightly. "You would share such technology, even after we threatened your world?" "That's what humans do," John replied simply. We help when we can. And in return, perhaps the Vikener could share their faster-than-light drive technology, which is more advanced than ours. Both our peoples would benefit. An alliance rather than conquest, the Emperor mused. This is not the Vikener way. It could be, John suggested. Your ancestors created beauty as well as weapons. Perhaps the Vikener can do both again. The Emperor was silent for a long time, considering. Finally, he activated his communication device. Supreme Commander Zertak, recall the fleet from Earth space. Then prepare the ceremonial chamber for the rite of alliance. John could hardly believe what he was hearing. Emperor, does this mean? It means we will try this human approach, the Emperor said. Not from weakness, but from wisdom. The strong survive? Yes, but perhaps survival comes in forms we have forgotten? 3 days later, John stood in the great ceremonial chamber aboard the UES Intrepid, which had traveled to Drakath for the occasion. The ship's hold had been converted into a space where both humans and Vikener could breathe comfortably. Captain Amy Russell, who had been skeptical of John's diplomatic mission from the start, now watched with amazement as the Vikener delegation entered. Zertek led the group, followed by 6 Vikener warriors. Each carried an ornate weapon, a symbol of their martial culture. One by one, they placed their weapons on a ceremonial table before the human delegation. In accordance with the ancient traditions of the Vikener Dominion, Zertak announced, we lay down our arms not in surrender, but in alliance. From this day forward, Vikener and humans shall walk the stars as equals, sharing knowledge and resources for the benefit of both peoples. John stepped forward to accept the gesture. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we welcome this alliance. Together we will face the challenges of the future and find solutions that neither of us could discover alone. The formal ceremony continued with the signing of the Human-Vikener Accord, the first interstellar alliance in Earth's history. News broadcasts from both worlds captured the historic moment. Later, as the celebrations continued, Zertak approached John in a quiet corner of the chamber. When we first met, I thought you were weak, the Vikener commander admitted. Now I understand that you simply had a different kind of strength, one that builds rather than destroys. John smiled. Both kinds have their place. The Vikener courage and discipline, combined with human creativity and compassion, will make our alliance stronger than either of us alone. 1 year later, John visited the first joint human-Vikener scientific outpost on one of the outer planets in the Vikener system. Earth terraforming technology was already showing promising results. While Vikener engineers helped human scientists improve their propulsion systems, most surprising to John was the classroom where the children of both species learned together. Human children wore lightweight exosuits to help them move in the higher gravity, while young Vikener learned to moderate their natural strength around their more fragile classmates. A young Vikener approached John during his tour. Elder John, is it true that humans are not as strong as Vikener? The child asked with innocent curiosity. John knelt down to look the young alien in the eyes. Strength takes many forms, he explained gently. The greatest strength is building bridges where others would build walls. The child considered this, then nodded solemnly. I will remember, he promised. As John continued his tour of the facility, he reflected on how far both species had come. What had begun as a confrontation on the edge of war had transformed into something neither side could have imagined. He had been just a human diplomat facing an alien threat. Now he was an architect of peace, showing both humans and Vikener a new way forward among the stars. Sometimes, John thought, the most powerful weapon isn't a gun or a claw or even a starship. Sometimes it's the willingness to listen, to understand, and to find common ground where none seemed possible. That was humanity's greatest strength, and now it was becoming the Vikener's as well.